you know, somebody raising their hand, but it makes sense to me that John Morse would know because he's a lawyer, so he probably has dealt with clients or he's heard about them in the courtroom, and Tommy, as someone who's very involved in the community, would have heard of Agency for Community Treatment Services. Agency for Community Treatment Services is the organization that I work for. It is a non-profit organization, and I do mean non-profit in every way. I did not discover this until after I started working there, and the first training I had was Acts don't pay for that. Whereupon they taught me how to get all sorts of free things like pens and little stickies and things like that at conferences for other people when we go to hotels. And I'm very good at that. Anyway, back to topic. Agency for Community Treatment Services opened up in 1987, I believe. Their purpose was to have a drug and alcohol rehabilitation service for people who were low income and could not afford the high-priced treatment centers that were being paid for by insurance companies that everybody else got to go to. Most of these people were homeless or very poor. They branched out with more funding. Today we have a youth offender jail, we have in processing for youth, we have a CIS division, which I'm still learning about. We have a brand new wet shelter where police officers can bring in homeless people who are drunk or on drugs, so that way we're not filling up the jail cells with the people who are drunk and sleeping behind the 7-Elevens. That way, you know, criminals who really need to be there can spend the night there instead. We also have a transitional housing program which teaches life skills and how to get a job and sends them to therapy groups and AA and NA meetings. We also have a in-house treatment center where they're locked up there for about 9 months to a year, where they're not allowed to go out into the community. They're not allowed to look for a job because they really need to get sober and they really need to focus on that, and they don't have the skills to take care of themselves. Then we have an assisted living facility, and they have a boarding house, and then we have the program that I work for called Community Support Services Supportive Housing Program, where I am a case manager. It's the same thing as a social worker, except that my clients must meet 3 criteria in order to be in our program. First, they must be homeless or considered homeless. Homeless could be living on the street, homeless could be bouncing from couch to couch, homeless could be living in a shelter, or homeless could be you're staying in a hotel paid for by somebody else or yourself. As long as you don't have a home of your own, then you are homeless. Secondly, they must have stable income, either through employment or through disability. And yes, I know. How many homeless people do you know that have stable income? Usually our clients have disability. Some of them have employment. Most of the time in this economy it's a part-time job. And the third criteria, which is very important, is that they must have some kind of disability, whether it's mental health or a physical disability. Usually it's mental health. Or and they must have a drug and alcohol addiction history. They must be sober for at least a year before we will allow them into our program. And my job as a case manager is I do home visits with them. I monitor whether or not they're taking their medication as prescribed. That's the most challenging part, because sometimes when they come into our program they decide they're all well. They don't have a mental health problem anymore. And when they stop taking their medication, the people who have schizophrenia suddenly start hearing voices. And these voices tell them to do all sorts of wonderful things, like take off their clothes and run up and down the street naked. Or the voices tell them to go break into people's houses. Or they tell them to hide under the bed for 3 days and not come out when we go looking for them. The ones who have bipolar disorder will like to spend all their money shopping, or they will go on a vacation up to Nebraska without telling us for 3 weeks. And we get a phone call from a police officer up there saying, we just arrested one of your clients. We also have clients who have chronic depression and anxiety issues. Many of them do recover if they stay on their medication. So that as a case manager, it's really important that I emphasize the importance of taking their medication as prescribed and working with their doctors. The other thing that we do in our housing program is that because they are low income, they pay 30% of their income, and then HUD picks up the 70% of their income, so that they're able to have housing, they're able to live independently in the community instead of being locked up in a mental hospital, which is what happened years and years ago. The other thing we emphasize is community involvement. If they are not working, we like them to do volunteer work, whether it's some of them volunteer at the SPCA, some of them like to volunteer at the VA, some of them will volunteer with other organizations that do outreach with the community for homeless people, such as there's a homeless organization, it just blew my mind. And we've had great progress in our program with some of them, because once they're in our program, if they want to, we have another side program that my partner manages, which is our Scattered Sites program, where they're able to go into an apartment in the community, where they're not in a residential apartment setting such as we have that we own, and they're able to live independently in the community. And for us, this is really great because we've seen a lot of progress. And the reason why I'm telling you about this is because if you don't have an alcoholic drug addict with mental health issues in your family, then there's a good chance that you know somebody who does. And a lot of times when people have an alcohol addiction or a drug addiction, that gets to the point where they've spent all their money on alcohol and drugs, they've burned their bridges with the community, they've burned their bridges with their family and all their relatives, and they really don't have any more friends. They really have nowhere else to go. And so we are the agency that wants them. We are the ones who want to help them. So if you know of anybody, please send them to Agency for Community Treatment Services. Thank you.